The laughter hit me harder than his words. 80 faces turned toward me, some smirking, others pretending to check their phones, as the new director, Alex Grant, stood in front of the screen with my name highlighted in red. "You've done some nice work, Lily," he said, smiling like a surgeon about to make the first cut. "But you've become a bottleneck." The conference room was too bright, the air too still. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. A bottleneck. I'd given 17 years to this company, long before Alex had even graduated college. I built the logistics systems that made us profitable, trained half the department, and managed crises that would have bankrupted us if I hadn't stayed until 3 a.m. to fix them. But in that instant, it was as if none of it mattered. The projector flicked to the next slide. Restructuring for efficiency. My position was listed under obsolete roles. Someone snorted quietly. Another chuckled. The sound spread like a crack through glass. Alex clasped his hands together, his designer watch glinting under the fluorescent light. "We need to be agile," he continued, pacing as if lecturing a classroom. "Legacy systems and outdated processes have been holding us back. We're moving forward with automation and younger, tech-driven staff, younger." The word stung more than obsolete. I kept my eyes on the table, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I could feel the heat rising up my neck, the pulse in my ears. I'd spent almost 2 decades here, and now I was being erased in 15 minutes of corporate theater. He clicked to another slide, my team's new structure without me. "Effective immediately," he said. "Lily's department will transition under Tyler Chen. He'll lead the implementation of our new platform. Tyler, my former intern, sat up straighter, trying not to look proud. The same kid I'd mentored, the one who'd once asked me to review his graduate school application, now nodded like a puppet, pretending he deserved it. I gripped the edge of my chair until my knuckles whitened. Every instinct screamed to stand up, to defend myself, to say something. But all I could do was sit there, frozen, the humiliation washing over me in waves. Then, from the back of the room, a voice cut through the silence. "Do you even know who she is?" The laughter stopped instantly. Every head turned. An older man stepped forward, leaning heavily on a cane. His presence seemed to drain the oxygen from the room. It took me a heartbeat to recognize him. Edward Kane, the company's founder. He rarely appeared at these meetings anymore. I hadn't seen him in person for years. Alex blinked, caught off guard. "Mr. Kane, Quiet." The word wasn't loud, but it carried decades of authority. He took a few slow steps forward, his eyes locked on Alex. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" The room fell completely silent. I could hear the hum of the projector, the faint creak of someone shifting in their chair. "This woman," Mr. Kane said, pointing his cane at me, "built the foundation you're now standing on. When our systems crashed back in 2008, she rebuilt them from scratch while half the company panicked. When we nearly lost the Jupiter contract, she stayed for 72 hours straight to save it." My throat tightened. I remembered those nights. No sleep, empty coffee cups, the faint hum of servers. But I'd never expected anyone to remember. And yet, here he was, listing the years I thought had vanished into oblivion. He turned to Alex. "You call her a bottleneck? You should be thanking her every day you have a job here." Alex's jaw clenched, but he kept his tone smooth. "With respect, sir, I value her contributions, but business evolves. We can't live in the past. Business evolves because of people like her." Mr. Kane interrupted sharply, not by replacing them, but by learning from them. For the first time in my life, I saw the director of operations, the man who'd humiliated me moments ago, struggle for words. His confidence faltered. His posture stiffened. Around the room, no one dared to move. Mr. Kane turned to me. His expression softened. "You've given this company your hands, your time, your health." I remember I nodded slightly. My voice caught somewhere between pride and disbelief. "Thank you, sir," I managed. He looked back at Alex. You'll schedule a private meeting with me this afternoon. I want every detail of this restructuring plan. And if I find even one unjust dismissal, we'll be restructuring you instead. Alex opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked pale now, his earlier smirk gone. Mr. Kane tapped his cane once against the floor. Meeting adjourned. He turned and left without another word. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. One by one, people began gathering their things, whispering under their breath. Tyler avoided my eyes. Alex stared down at his laptop, pretending to type. I sat there for a moment longer, my pulse finally slowing. For 17 years, I'd been the one holding everything together quietly, invisibly. And in a single moment, the man who built this company had reminded everyone of it. But as I walked back to my office, I couldn't shake one thought. This wasn't over. Because if there was one thing I'd learned in all those years, it was this. Public humiliation is never just an accident. It's a move. And every move deserves a response. When I got back to my office, the open plan floor fell silent. Conversations cut off mid-sentence, keyboards stopped clicking, and everyone suddenly found something fascinating on their screens. No one looked at me directly, but I could feel their glances like static in the air. I closed the door quietly. The sound of it shutting felt final, like sealing myself off from the company I'd helped build. My desk looked exactly as it had for years. Neat stacks of reports, color-coded binders, a photo of my daughter on her first day of college. Nothing had changed on the surface, but everything had. For a long moment, I just stood there, trying to process what had happened. The humiliation still burned under my skin. Mr. Kane's defense had stunned everyone, including me, but it didn't erase the damage. Alex had called me obsolete in front of the entire company. That stain wouldn't wash off easily. A soft knock broke the silence. The door creaked open and Tyler stepped in. Lily, he said carefully, can we talk? I studied him. He looked nervous, which was something. You're the new head of operations, I said, keeping my voice even. You don't need my permission to talk. He winced. I didn't know Alex was going to do it like that. He said quickly. He told me the restructuring would be private. I swear I didn't. Tyler, I interrupted. Don't. You sat there and said nothing. He shifted uncomfortably. I couldn't risk. I know, I said quietly. You couldn't risk your position. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence stretched until he muttered, I'm sorry, and left. When the door shut again, I sat down and pressed my palms against the desk. I wasn't angry at Tyler. He was young, ambitious, and terrified. I'd been him once, but that didn't make the betrayal easier. A notification pinged on my computer. Mandatory HR meeting, 3 p.m. My stomach tightened. Damage control, I thought. They'd be scrambling to contain the fallout from Kane's outburst. At 3 sharp, I walked into HR's glass-walled office. Emma, the HR manager, gave me a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. Lily, please sit down. Alex was already there, arms folded. He looked composed again, though a faint tension rippled around his mouth. Let's keep this professional, he said. Professional? I almost laughed. Emma cleared her throat. Mr. Kane's comments this morning created some confusion. She began. We're reviewing all restructuring decisions to ensure compliance with policy. In the meantime, Lily, your role remains under evaluation. Under evaluation? I repeated. Meaning? Alex leaned forward. Meaning nothing is finalized yet. We'll determine the best fit for your experience moving forward. You've been with the company a long time. We value that his tone was smooth, but his eyes gave him away. He wasn't apologizing. He was regrouping. I see, I said. And how long will this evaluation take? A week? Maybe 2, Emma said. Please don't worry. You'll continue receiving full pay. I nodded slowly. Right, paid silence. Neither of them responded. When I left the HR office, the hallway felt colder than usual. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. That was brave today. He won't forget it. No name, no signature. Just that. I stared at it for a long time before locking the screen. I didn't need more mystery today. That evening, I stayed late, packing a few personal things into a box. Not because I was leaving, yet, but because it felt wrong to leave them in someone else's hands. I ran my fingers over a small wooden plaque on my shelf. Employee of the Year, 2013. The memory of that night came back easily. Mr. Kane shaking my hand, saying, "People like you are the reason we'll survive any storm." Apparently, storms were easier to survive when you weren't considered a bottleneck. As I turned off the lights, I noticed movement down the hall. Alex was in his glass office, phone pressed to his ear, pacing. His reflection shimmered faintly in the dark. I couldn't hear his words, but I caught fragments. Kane's interference, optics, temporary hold. So that was it. He wasn't backing down, just biding time until he could make his next move. On the drive home, the city lights blurred in the rain. My head throbbed. Every scene replayed in my mind. The laughter, the stares, Mr. Kane's voice slicing through the tension. "Do you even know who she is?" I didn't know what surprised me more. That he remembered me, or that no one else seemed to. When I reached my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. My inbox was overflowing with quiet messages from colleagues. That was brutal. "Are you okay? He had no right to humiliate you." Kane really put him in his place. And one that stood out: "Be careful. He's already planning something. HR's just a smokescreen." No name again. I stared at the message for a long time. My instincts told me it was true. People like Alex didn't forget public embarrassment. They retaliated. Quietly. Efficiently. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the screen reflecting off my wine glass. I didn't know what Mr. Kane's sudden defense meant for me, whether it was protection or temporary luck. But I knew this. The fight wasn't over. And if Alex thought I was just an aging obstacle he could quietly push aside, he'd soon learn something about women like me. We may bend, but we don't break. Not when everything we've built is on the line. As thunder rolled faintly outside, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for HR to decide my worth. I was going to find out why Alex wanted me gone, and what he didn't want Mr. Kane to see. Because if he thought this was the end of my story, he was about to learn how wrong he was. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The parking lot was still half empty, the building washed in the pale light of dawn. My badge still worked. Small mercy. And as the elevator doors closed, I caught my reflection in the mirror-polished steel. Tired eyes, hair pulled back, calm on the surface. No one would guess my stomach was in knots. I needed answers. Alex hadn't humiliated me for sport. There was something else behind his decision. Something strategic. People like him didn't move without purpose. When I reached my floor, I slipped into my office quietly. My inbox had already begun filling with overnight updates, mostly forwarded reports I wasn't supposed to see anymore. But one email caught my eye. Subject line: System audit. Procurement access request. Sent from Tyler's new account. I opened it. Attached was a request form bearing Alex's signature, asking for temporary elevated access to vendor contracts. That level of access was unnecessary for his position. It allowed someone to edit or replace supplier invoices, something only I and the finance controller were authorized to do. My gut twisted. I'd seen this pattern before, years ago, when a project manager had inflated vendor invoices to skim a consulting fee. We caught it just in time. Alex's request looked eerily similar. I printed the form and slipped it into my bag. If I was right, Alex wasn't streamlining operations. He was positioning himself to control money flows. And removing me, the only person who'd noticed discrepancies, was step one. A soft knock startled me. Emma from HR peeked in, holding a folder. "Morning, Lily. Just checking in. How are you holding up?" "I've been better," I said honestly. "What's that?" "Paperwork from yesterday's meeting," she said, placing it on my desk. "Standard documentation while your role is under review." I thanked her, but before she left, I asked, "Emma, do you know if Mr. Kane spoke to Alex after the meeting?" She hesitated. "They met privately last night. I wasn't there, but Alex didn't look pleased afterward." That gave me a flicker of hope. "And the evaluation? Is HR actually reviewing, or is this just protocol?" Her lips pressed together. "Off the record?" "It's both. The board's split. Kane wants to freeze all structural changes until an internal audit is done. But Alex is pushing back, saying delays will cost the company an internal audit," I repeated. "When does that start?" "End of the week," she said. "They're bringing in an external team." My pulse quickened. If Alex had tampered with vendor contracts, that audit could expose it, unless he covered his tracks first. After she left, I stared at the folder on my desk. I couldn't sit and wait for someone else to uncover the truth. I opened my old system dashboard. Still active, thanks to a small oversight in IT's offboarding procedure, and began searching transaction logs from the past 2 months. It didn't take long. I found a series of unusual payments funneled through a new vendor account called ALX Consulting. The initials didn't even try to be subtle. The amounts were just below the threshold that triggered secondary approval. Classic trick. I took screenshots, encrypted them, and saved them to a flash drive I kept on my keychain. My hands trembled slightly. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was corporate fraud. At 9:05 a.m., the office began filling. Conversations floated through the air. Tyler walked by, pretending not to see me. Then, as I was about to close my laptop, an unexpected voice came from the doorway. "Early start, Ms. Hanley?" Alex stood there, coffee in hand, smile perfectly measured. Still dedicated, even while on review. Impressive, I forced a calm tone. "Old habits." He stepped inside, uninvited, and leaned casually against the desk. "Listen, about yesterday. Things got a little intense. I hope you understand this is nothing personal." "Of course," I said evenly. "Purely business." He studied me, his eyes sharp, calculating. "You've done good work here, but sometimes progress means letting go. The founder? He's sentimental. I'm not. Don't take it the wrong way." "I don't," I lied. "I just hope the company benefits from the changes." "Oh, it will," he said with quiet confidence. "Trust me." He turned to leave, then paused. "By the way, HR mentioned you still have access to the old logistics system. IT will disable it today. Just a heads up." My chest tightened. He knew. "Of course," I said, managing a polite smile. When he left, I exhaled slowly. I had maybe a few hours before he locked me out. I backed up the rest of the transaction logs and hid the flash drive inside the lining of my bag. At lunch, I drove to a small cafe across from headquarters, the same place Mr. Kane used to eat when he still ran the company. I wasn't sure why, but I hoped I might find him there. Luck, or fate, was on my side. He was sitting alone in the corner, reading the paper. I hesitated, then approached. "Mr. Kane?" He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before softening into recognition. "Lily," he said warmly. "Join me." I sat down, lowering my voice. "Sir, I think I know why Alex wanted me gone." He listened as I explained everything. The access requests, the vendor account, the hidden payments. His expression hardened with every word. "I can't prove intent yet," I said, sliding a copy of the form across the table. "But this isn't routine." He's consolidating financial control. Kane's jaw tightened. That would explain the resistance to the audit. He folded the paper and slipped it into his jacket. "You did the right thing telling me. But you need to be careful. Don't confront him again. let me handle this quietly. I can't just... You've done enough. He interrupted firmly. I'll make some calls. Go home early today. And Lily, thank you. As I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. He knows you talked to Kane. My blood ran cold. When I looked back toward the office building, Alex was standing by the window of his corner office, phone pressed to his ear, eyes locked on the parking lot. Straight at me. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside my apartment made me flinch. The glow from my phone on the nightstand kept me half awake, waiting for another message that never came. By sunrise, I had convinced myself I was overreacting, but a part of me knew I wasn't. Alex knew I'd gone to Kane. That much was certain. The question was, how? When I arrived at work the next morning, the air felt heavier. My badge still worked, but I noticed 2 security officers standing near the elevators, pretending not to watch me. In the office, people avoided eye contact altogether. Even Tyler's desk was empty. As I sat down, my computer booted to a new login screen. My access had been fully revoked. A message appeared. Account deactivated. Please contact IT. They'd moved faster than I expected. At 9:12 a.m., Emma from HR appeared at my door. Her face was pale, lips pressed tight. Lily, she began. Could we speak privately? I nodded, following her into a small meeting room. She closed the door softly. I wanted you to hear this from me, she said, lowering her voice. Alex reported that you accessed confidential financial files after your role was suspended. My stomach dropped. That's not true. I accessed data I was still authorized to view. I believe you, she said quickly. But the board's being told you leaked sensitive information to external parties, possibly to Mr. Kane. I felt my pulse hammering in my throat. That's absurd. I know, she said, but he's building a case. He's saying your actions could compromise pending contracts. I took a steadying breath. And what does the board believe? She hesitated. They're divided. Kane's pushing for a formal audit, but Preston, our CEO, is backing Alex for now. HR has been instructed to suspend your employment until the investigation is complete. Suspended. It felt like the word itself sucked all the air out of the room. Emma looked genuinely sorry. I shouldn't even be telling you this. But be prepared. You'll probably receive an official notice by the end of the day. I stared at the blank whiteboard on the wall, the faint traces of old marker lines that no one had bothered to erase. So that's it. 17 years, and suddenly I'm under investigation. Emma touched my arm gently. For what it's worth, Kane doesn't believe any of it. He's furious. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. Kane's support was powerful, but temporary. If Alex managed to fabricate evidence before the audit began, I'd be the scapegoat. When I returned to my office, a cardboard box sat on my desk with a note from security. Please clear personal items before noon. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just a box. It was the physical manifestation of erasure. At 10:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with an email from a private address. Check the contracts folder in Internal Archive. Folder name, Phoenix. No signature, no context. Just that. Against every sensible instinct, I decided to follow the lead. Using my personal laptop, I accessed the company's public archive system, a server used for marketing materials that still mirrored older internal data. It took minutes of digging, but I found it. Phoenix_contracts_2023. The files were encrypted PDFs with altered metadata, recently modified by T. Chen. My heart sank. Tyler. I opened one file using a decryption tool I'd helped IT test years ago. Inside were purchase orders and payments tied to the same fake vendor name, ALX Consulting. But now it was worse. Tyler's digital signature had been appended to them, effectively making him look like the culprit. It was a perfect setup. Alex had left just enough digital fingerprints to implicate someone else. And now that I'd been suspended, I'd have no way to clear my name once this evidence surfaced. I copied everything: screenshots, logs, metadata trails, and sent them to an encrypted email address I'd created the night before. Then I printed one contract, folded it carefully, and slid it into my bag. At 11:32 a.m., my office phone rang. Unknown number. Lily Hanley, I answered. Ms. Hanley, a man's voice said briskly. This is Marcus Lane, external auditor assigned by the board. Mr. Kane requested that we meet today. Are you available at 2 o'clock? Relief flickered through me. Yes, absolutely. Please bring any documentation relevant to your role's restructuring and project finances from the last quarter, he added. I glanced at the flash drive in my bag. I will. 2 hours later, I sat in the conference room across from Marcus, a calm, methodical man in his 40s with sharp eyes and no visible bias. Kane joined us 10 minutes later, walking with his cane but radiating authority. Before we begin, Marcus said, Mr. Kane has shared concerns regarding irregularities in financial records. Ms. Hanley, I understand you have supporting material? I nodded and handed him a folder of printouts, explaining the pattern, the fake vendor, the access requests. As I spoke, Kane's expression darkened. When I finished, Marcus looked thoughtful. These documents show unauthorized approvals, but they'll need to be verified against the original database. Your access has been revoked, correct? Yes, I said. I'll request mirrored backups, he said. If this holds up, it's serious misconduct, possibly criminal. Kane turned to me. You did the right thing. Stay away from the office for now. I'll ensure you're protected. Before I could reply, the door opened. Alex stepped in uninvited, mask of politeness firmly in place. I wasn't aware we had a meeting, he said, glancing between us. Marcus stood. Mr. Grant, we're conducting a preliminary review of financial discrepancies. Alex's eyes flicked to the papers on the table. And you're relying on her? The person under investigation for leaking internal data? Kane's cane struck the floor sharply. Watch your words, Alex. Alex's smile didn't falter. Just stating facts. You're letting emotion cloud judgment, I met his gaze. You're scared, I said quietly. He froze for half a second, just enough to confirm it. Marcus gathered the papers. I'll need to review the system backups. We'll resume tomorrow. As I stood to leave, Alex leaned in close enough for only me to hear. You think you've won something? You have no idea how deep this goes. I didn't answer. But as I walked out of the building, I finally felt something I hadn't felt in days. Not fear. Control. By the next morning, the office was buzzing like a disturbed hive. Rumors moved faster than emails. I parked farther away than usual and watched from my car for a moment. The kind of quiet before a storm that feels almost sacred. I wasn't supposed to come in. Kane had told me to stay home. But I needed to see it for myself. I needed to know it was finally ending. When I stepped into the lobby, the receptionist gave me a nervous smile. Morning, Ms. Hanley. They're expecting you upstairs. Who's they? She hesitated. Mr. Kane, the auditors, and the board. My pulse quickened. It was happening. I took the elevator to the top floor. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see everyone already seated. Kane at the head of the table, Marcus beside him with a thick folder. Preston, the CEO, looked tense. Alex sat near the corner, his usual composure replaced by something brittle and sharp. When I entered, every conversation stopped. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Hanley, Marcus said, gesturing to the empty chair opposite Alex. We'll be brief. I sat down, keeping my expression neutral. Marcus opened his folder. After reviewing the backup servers and transaction histories, we've confirmed multiple unauthorized modifications to vendor contracts over the past 3 months. Payments totaling just under $400,000 were funneled through a shell entity called ALX Consulting. A murmur rippled around the table. Marcus continued, voice calm but cold. The account was traced to an offshore company registered under an alias matching your initials, Mr. Grant. We also found that several of the altered files were timestamped during hours when Ms. Hanley's credentials were inactive, meaning she could not have accessed them. All eyes turned to Alex. He forced a laugh that didn't sound human. That's ridiculous. Anyone could have spoofed my credentials, especially someone who knew the systems inside out. He looked at me. Like her? Marcus didn't flinch. We verified through IOP logs and system certificates. The activity originated from your office computer, Mr. Grant. The evidence is definitive. Alex's smile cracked. This is absurd. Kane's voice cut through the air. Enough. The single word landed like a gavel. You've been warned before about overreaching. Now we find you've been stealing from the very company you claim to modernize. Preston rubbed his temples, looking exhausted. Alex? Why? Alex straightened in his chair, defiance flickering. Because this place is dying, he said, voice rising. You all worship tradition while competitors leave us behind. I was trying to save it, and he pointed at me, was standing in the way. You weren't saving it, Kane said quietly. You were selling it. The room went still. Marcus closed the folder. We've already frozen the accounts linked to your authorization keys. Legal counsel is preparing formal charges. You'll need to surrender your access badge immediately. For a moment, Alex just sat there, stunned. Then his jaw tightened. You'll regret this, he spat, rising abruptly. All of you. He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. The echo lingered long after his footsteps faded. Preston sighed deeply, his shoulders sagging. 17 years, he said, turning to me. You warned us about the human cost of rushing modernization. I should have listened sooner. Kane placed a hand on the table. We'll correct it now. He looked at me. Lily, I owe you an apology. You didn't just protect this company. You protected its soul. I swallowed hard, the weight of months finally catching up to me. I didn't do it for gratitude, I said quietly. I just didn't want to see everything we built destroyed. Preston nodded. The board has already agreed to reinstate your position. And not just that. We want you to lead the new Quality and Ethics Division. Direct access to the board. No intermediaries. For a second, I couldn't speak. You're serious? Kane smiled faintly. Completely. Relief flooded me so quickly it almost made me dizzy. 17 years of work, humiliation, and fear, validated in a single moment. I thanked them both and stepped outside. Through the window, I could see security escorting Alex out of the building, his shoulders rigid, his gaze fixed straight ahead. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt strangely hollow. When I returned to my old office, a few coworkers looked up. No one laughed this time. Tyler approached me hesitantly. Lily, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know what he was doing. I know, I said. Now you do. Learn from it. He nodded, eyes lowered. That evening, after the official announcement went out, I stayed behind, standing by the window as the city lights blinked to life. My reflection stared back. Older, steadier, maybe a little wiser. Kane stopped by before leaving. You could have walked away, he said. Most people would have. I almost did, I admitted. But sometimes walking away feels like letting someone else write the ending for you. He nodded thoughtfully. Then I'm glad you stayed long enough to finish the story yourself. When he left, I turned off the lights. The office was quiet again. Just the soft hum of the machines I once feared would replace me. They hadn't. They never could. The next morning, I arrived early, coffee in hand, same as always. My nameplate had been reinstalled outside my office door. Clean, polished, like it had never been removed. But inside, I left one thing unchanged. The small wooden plaque on my shelf. Employee of the Year, 2013. I smiled. Not because of what it represented, but because of what it reminded me. Progress doesn't mean erasing the past. It means building on it. And sometimes the quietest person in the room, the one you call a bottleneck, is the only reason everything still works.